Alright. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's N.I.X TV, where we keep it real, relaxed and revolutionary. Alright, so today we're gonna talk about testimony. So we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And I've been feeling for many months like mine needs to be shared. I feel like the Lord put it on my heart, and several things have happened that have been a confirmation to me that this is what the Lord wants me to do. Anybody that knows me knows I don't really like to, you only know a certain amount. Like, for those that are close to me, the floodgates are open. They've seen me in all sorts of capacities, but for most people I tend to be quite private, and if I don't want you to know something, you won't know it. I don't know if I'll keep the comments open or if I'll disable them, I don't know. But yeah, so we're going to talk today about how I came to the Lord and life. And yeah, several trigger warnings. We will be discussing a lot of stuff. So if you know that you get triggered easily, particularly to do with mental health, just maybe this is not the place. Actually, no, yeah, this is the place for you. We're gonna learn about some stuff, and we're just gonna talk and get through. I'm so nervous. Oh, Lord, help me, Lord. Okay, yes, okay, so we're just gonna get into it. So yeah, so I grew up in a African Caribbean household. There wasn't necessarily a particular religious view that we grew up around. My mum had grown up Christian, but for whatever reason had come away from that and was very much into the New Age. Yeah, and my dad came from a Jehovah's Witness background, and he had left the organisation and got with my mum, and they basically raised us in a house of you can be whatever you want. We didn't go to church, we didn't pray. It was very much affirmations, and yeah, that kind of thing. So growing up, I immediately had, as far back as I can remember, if not birth, I've tried to pinpoint whereabouts in my life this all started, but as far back as I can remember, I've dealt with asthma, eczema, hay fever, and a plethora of different allergies. So this would be allergies literally to wheat, dairy, gluten, nuts, some fruits, a lot of fruits, and this is back before being vegan was cool, back before avocado and quinoa, and I call that thing quinoa, but that's fine. Before all of the shops were popping up. This is back when the free from section in Sainsbury's was this small, and you only had a few items to choose from. So we often had to go to Fresh and Wild or Whole Foods to get special food for me. So I, growing up, immediately felt different. I couldn't eat the same food that kids were eating. I often had to come home for lunch. In the early times of primary school, I had to come home for lunch because they couldn't cater for me. And yeah, I wouldn't have necessarily called myself sickly, because outside of the asthma and the eczema, there was nothing wrong with me. Like, I was your average healthy kid, but I just couldn't breathe. Just couldn't breathe, and I was just scratching all the time, and it would just create scarring. Scar tissue was just all over my body. They used to have to put, my parents used to have to put mittens on me so that I could sleep and I wouldn't scratch myself, because I'd literally keep going until I was bleeding, and it would be bad. And even when I'd be playing with other kids with the asthma, if it got too bad, I would have to stop And back in the day, it wasn't just the that we see Milhouse using Simpsons. No, it was this. It's a huge, like that big, like a huge plastic contraption that you have to place the asthma pump on the other side of, and then and I get it, it's to help kids like breathe, but it looks weird if you're playing with kids and all of a sudden you bring out the contraption. So yeah, there was an immediate feeling growing up that I was definitely different and I wasn't really like other kids. So growing up, I went to school, and pretty much from the onset of school, I didn't realise how early it was until I actually spoke to my mum about it a few years later, but apparently it was from maybe the 4th week of reception, so pretty early. I came home and basically told my parents, like, things have been happening at school. The first instance I can remember is I was playing in the playground with a white girl and a black girl, but this black girl was like, she was lighter than me, so yeah, so I remember the black girl, coming to me and saying, okay, we're going to play hopscotch. The white girl's going to go first because she's white. I'm going to go first because I'm brown, and you have to go last because you're black. And at the time, as a kid, you're like 4 or 5, you don't really think that there's anything wrong with that. You're just like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, I guess. So we played the game, and I think I came home and ended up telling my mum, and she was immediately like, no, this is not okay. So unbeknownst to me, she'd obviously gone around to the school and started kind of talking to them, but I just kind of went on like, you know, everything was okay. So then from there, it kind of escalated to people just picking on me about whatever they could kind of find. Because I did have eczema, my skin was like cracked and sore all the time. Got called all sorts of stuff like lizard skin, like anything that you can think of to do with a black person that is dark skin, like burnt toast, blick. Oh, I hate that word. Hate it. Got called all sorts of stuff. So that kind of continued, and the amount of people doing it also kind of got bigger. So school was just a kind of miserable place for me, and it would be really interesting because I'd come home and there would be so much love at home. My parents and my little sister, she's four years younger than me. There was so much love that I'd feel at home from all of my relatives and all that kind of stuff, and it didn't match up with what I was experiencing at school. So I figured in my 6-year-old brain that people in school must be telling me the truth. You know, they see me for a majority of the week. They see me for a majority of the time. Like, most of my time is at school. So if they're telling me I'm ugly, if they're telling me that I'm this and I'm worthless and I'm that, then that must be true. And my parents and my family members must be lying to me. So it ended up showing in my schoolwork as well. I had no confidence. I would cry a lot, and my countenance was just constantly it had just fallen. I was a very happy child, but in spite of all of the health issues that I was having, and after starting primary school, it just kind of went downhill from there. Also, I was exposed to sex at a very early age as well. That is a whole other thing. I might do another video about that. But that came with a lot of complications as well. So as you can imagine, it was very confusing for a 6 or 7-year-old child to kind of not only be bullied, but to be exposed to something that you just should not be exposed to at all at that age. So I decided, coming into year 3 now, the bullying was kind of ramping up. More and more people were beginning to catch on and beginning to pick on me. So I just decided, like, there's not really any point of living anymore, because my family are not telling me the truth. I don't really have friends that stick up for me, and if I go to school, the teachers, I'm not going to say they were racist, but they definitely didn't like me because they knew who my mother was. They knew that she didn't stand for me being bullied, and she was very vocal about it, so they didn't like me. anytime I try and report it to a teacher, they would they would basically try and twist it back on me as if I was the one that was bullying like 20 other kids. Okay, so yeah, it just felt like there's no support. Even though mum is trying to help me, it's not working because the kids are continuing to bully me, and I had a fear. I was a very fearful kid. I didn't like going to school. I didn't like speaking to people. I just didn't feel like I could really carry on. So in year 3, I think you're about 8. So I remember living in the library at a good amount of points in primary school. And in me saying this also, I do want to point out, like, not all of primary school was bad. There were times where you have fun and you laugh and all that kind of stuff. Like, it wasn't all bleak house. But in the same token, this did take up a huge proportion of my time in primary school. This spanned from reception straight on to year 6. So yeah, so year 3, I basically lived in the library and I loved to read. I was a very articulate and very creative child. I was always drawing, always writing, always reading. Like, I used to go through books like lawnmowers go through grass. Like, I was in there in the library. And I love Jacqueline Wilson books. And I picked up this book one day called Dustbin Baby. And I don't know who allowed me to check out that book. But effectively, for those that haven't read it, it's about a child who from the onset is abandoned. I'm trying to even remember the plot. But, like, a child is from the onset basically abandoned by her parents. She ends up, I think, going into foster care or something like that. She ends up finding her mum, and then the mum kills herself. She slits her wrists in the bath, and the child discovers her there. And then just her life is just peak. It's peak. So I decided that I identify with this book so much. I can't really live. I can't really go on. So in hindsight, I don't know if I could have actually gone through with it. But at the time, enough of a will was there. Like, I didn't see what else I could have done to be happy, to feel like my life mattered, and to feel like I was loved. So I decided I'm going to drown myself in the bath. And I couldn't swim at the time, so if I had stayed under for long enough, I would not really know how to kind of, yeah. I didn't really think about the logistics of it. But I just thought, okay, this is how we're gonna go out. So I remember coming home from school one day, running the bath, and thinking, okay, cool, like, this is the bath, and I'm gonna go watch EastEnders. So I remember we were an EastEnders family back then. So I was sitting in my parents' room watching EastEnders, listening to the bath, and for some reason the episode ran long, like really long. Like, usually they're about 28 to 30 minutes. This one was about 31 to 32 minutes, and I was timing it specifically because I knew that the bath takes about 30 minutes to kind of go all the way up. So I was watching EastEnders, it finishes, and then I start to hear screaming downstairs, and my parents are shouting, turn off the bath water, it's overflowing, it's coming down into the kitchen. And the kitchen was directly below our bathroom at the time. So I run into the bathroom, the water is all over the floor, the bath is like just overflowed, and I was like, crap, like, my plan is can't run, like, they found out. So I turn off the tap and I try and go to put my hand in the water to pull up the plug, and it felt weird. The water felt weird. It felt like, if this is like my hand, it felt like the water was going like that around my hand. It was the strangest feeling I've ever felt in my life. So I'm now calling my dad upstairs saying I can't pull the plug on the water. So my dad comes up, he's cussing, you're not getting no birthday presents this year, da 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 da. Me and my little mind was thinking, well, I didn't plan to stick around for that long, like, this was supposed to be my exit plan, you know. But yeah, so he basically sees that I can't pull the plug out, and he puts his little finger in it, and then he brings it out immediately, and he says, that water is electrically charged. I hope you didn't put your hand in there. And I was like, Meanwhile, my whole arm had been in that water. And the fact that a grown man went like that in the water and pulled it out immediately because it had shocked him, I was thinking, why did I not die? I should have been electrocuted in that moment. And what had actually happened is, because the kitchen is directly below, and the kind of light that we've got are one of those long ones that are against the ceiling, the water had overflowed, gone down through the pipes and into the light. So the water had the current from the light fixture basically, and that had carried back up to the bath. So yeah, my plan was foiled, and I didn't end up doing it on that occasion, but suicidal thoughts still continued to be thoughts for me. I just didn't really want to exist. I didn't really want to live in a world where I would go to school for 9 hours a day and be treated like, yeah, and then come home, struggle with schoolwork, and yeah, it was a really weird contrast that my mind just couldn't grasp. I couldn't grasp why at home everything was fine. My mum literally, thank God for my mum, she literally, like, she took whatever allergies I had and she found whatever she could make. We used to have homemade crumbles out of oats. She used to literally, homemade stuff was her forte. Like, she used to just bang it out. I'm so thankful for my mother and my dad. Literally, they learned how to bake things, they learned how to cook things that I could actually eat in the house. So I never felt different at home. I only felt different at school. And it was very evident in the lunch hall when you bring out like free from Smarties, like, you know, Smarties, like the chocolate, and they're like grey, and kids are looking at like, what are you eating? So yeah, it like, life kind of continued. I was still very much just confused in my head about just not feeling loved. And I really did have a thing about rejection. Like, I hated feeling rejected. I hated feeling rejected by family, friends, school, teachers. Like, if there was ever a time that like there was rejection, it would do something to me. Like, I wouldn't be able to take it. I just used to cry and cry and cry. I was a very fearful child. So time goes on now. Year 4 was rough. Year 5 wasn't too bad. That was a bit of respite within school. Year 6 came, and year 6 was a very interesting year. I don't know. Yeah. As far as the bullying, it was kind of as bad as it could have ever been. Kids would run away from me. If there was ever a time where it would be like, oh, okay, we're doing partners, people would literally like part like the Red Sea away from me. There was one time where people tried to cut off my hair in school, and yeah, the worst point was where I was in year 6, and we had this thing called Golden Time. If you're in the UK, I don't know if a lot of schools do it, but we had Golden Time, which is Friday afternoon, just before we get let out. We get to do whatever we want. Some people used to go outside. I didn't really want to be around other kids, so I stayed inside. I used to write poems, write stories, and draw. And there was this one time I made a poster, like a little picture of a person, and I put it in my tray and then went home. So I then got a knock at the door after leaving school, going home, and I saw my picture on the floor. So somebody had taken it. Bearing in mind, okay, I'm so sorry, I really should have mentioned this before. Context. I lived, and I still do live, across the road from the school that I went to. So my mum could literally see me coming home. I could see the house from the school, so it was only that. Yeah, so I come out and see the picture in our front garden. I go to pick it up, and it looks like soil, but it's not soil. It was on the back of this picture, and I called my mum, and she was like, "Oh my gosh!" So somebody had gone into my tray, known that I'd drawn that picture, taken it, not smeared because there was so much of it. I don't know how they did it. They picked up dog poo, smeared it on the back of the picture, put it outside my house, knocked on the door, and run away. So my mum just said, you know what, it's okay, throw that away and put the picture in the bin. So I put the picture in the bin, and as I went upstairs, she began to hear laughter, and she looked around. We have a little fence outside our house, and there were all of those kids there. So that was a whole thing. She cussed out the kids, called up the parents got cussed out as well, the school found out. And it was really interesting actually, because up to that point the school kind of was moving as if I was making it up, that the bullying wasn't actually happening, that people weren't actually being disrespectful and awful, and they can't ignore a situation where there is some like poo outside someone's garden in their house, like, you know. So yeah, so primary school ended, and I kind of left primary school having made a vow to myself. You have to be very careful with vows. Having made a vow to myself that nobody will ever treat me like that, no one will ever hurt me like that. Going into secondary school, if anybody tries to do that, I will fight. I don't care if I will fight them. My mouth became my biggest weapon going into secondary school. And I praise God because secondary school was a lot better. Like, there was literally all of that bullying, it just dissipated, it just went. I found some amazing friends, and it was just much better. There were times where like, I'd argue with people and like have screaming matches with people. Oh, screaming! But my thing was, I will not be disrespected. You will not disrespect me. Do not disrespect me. And it's actually really interesting because I didn't really feel like in my life until the age of 15 that I was missing anything. Definitely when I was being bullied, I felt like I was missing something. It was really weird to me, just in general, that other kids went to church and I didn't. That other kids believed in Jesus and I don't. Like, there was a really clear thing in primary school. You notice other kids around you. Okay, so-and-so wears a headscarf because they're Muslim and, you know, they follow Islam. And this one, you know, he's Jewish, this one is Buddhist, this one is Christian. And I was like, well, where am I? I don't really fit in anywhere. So yeah, fast forward now, secondary school, year 10 comes, and this was in the September, so this happened end of September in 2013. So up to this point, my parents had been working, they had very good jobs, and they rarely got ill, they rarely got sick. So one day, my mum came home from work and she just wasn't feeling good. I remember we ended up having to call an ambulance for her. She said her heart was like racing, it was beating really fast and she couldn't control it. It was like she felt as if she was having a heart attack. So they called the ambulance for her and they went to hospital. I'd never seen anything like that before in my life. My mum was like steel. That woman was my rock. Literally, she was never ill. She was never, like, if it was a little cold, she'd power through it, get over it. But I'd never seen her so weak and just vulnerable before. So yeah, so that happened. I ended up lying to my sister just so I didn't worry her, because I didn't know if it was going to be okay, she's fine now, or that thing. But I remember sitting there and just crying. And as time went on, she came back from the hospital, but she got a lot worse. She dropped about 3 stone in the space of maybe 2 months. The doctors didn't really know what was wrong with her. They just knew that she was having heart palpitations all the time, that she was losing weight, that she wasn't really eating, and that she would faint a lot, and stuff like that. So for me, being the oldest, I kind of would have to take on a lot of her stuff that she would do around the house. So I'm in year 11 at this point. So on top of year 11, coursework, exams, I'm also coming home doing whatever house cleaning needs to be done because mum's upstairs and she can't get out of bed. And then I'm cooking, and it felt like a lot of pressure. I wasn't spoiled as a kid. My parents taught me to cook and clean, but the pressure was definitely felt when a parent is out of action completely and you don't have the meat, like it's not evenly spread. And very quickly after that, maybe the November or the December, my sister got ill. Now, none of us really saw any of that coming, but it all of a sudden was as if she had this vitamin D deficiency. Like, her legs would just hurt her, like she would just cry. She couldn't go to school. She didn't go to school for months. She'd be in the hospital and they'd send her schoolwork there. So I was having to it would literally be on me to do housework and stuff like that. Well, me and my dad, but my dad was working. So then it kind of came to a point where I think the whole company folded, and everyone was made redundant basically, and he was at home, and I think he kind of struggled to process his wife being ill, his daughter being ill, and not having a job as well. And it felt like at the time he kind of ended up taking it out on me. So I found that he kind of ended up being really cold and stern, and kind of, why aren't you doing this, why aren't you doing that? And I just ended up dreading going home. I used to stay out after secondary school. I used to find any excuse to be out, come home at maybe 7, 8, even 9 p.m. I just didn't want to be at home. I hated being at home. And I found myself get very depressed, very low. I didn't really speak to people. I kind of, not cut a lot of people off, but I just didn't feel the need to maintain friendships that I felt no support from, or that they wouldn't understand. So I kind of distanced myself from people. As time continued on, year 11 continued, mum just got worse and worse and worse. I mean, now we didn't have any money. So now we've got bailiffs coming to the door, and that kind of stuff. And although my parents were insured, they did have insurance that can only take you so far before it runs out. And it just was, life just kind of was perpetually hard. So in the December of that year, I remember going to my friend's church for a Christmas party, and it was like, okay, yeah, it was cool, like, it was fun, but I was like, yeah, okay, cool, fine. But I didn't really feel like this is where I want to go. Like, I didn't really, like, nah, I've got bigger fish to fry. You know, my mum can't get out of bed. Dad is like, just, yeah, my sister just isn't well, like the household is on me right now, and I'm crumbling under the pressure of it, and I can feel myself going numb, back into that place that I was when I was being bullied, and I just kind of was like, I don't want to deal with this again, I don't want to do this. So fast forward, my friend was, and it's a friend that I'd had for years. Our mums were friends, and they actually went to that church. And she basically was saying, oh, why don't you come to like the youth services and stuff? So we come to youth, and youth was really nice. It was just fun. It just felt like peace outside of the house. I just wanted to do anything so I could get out, just anything to get out of the house. So I would be going to those youth sessions, and it wouldn't be too Bible heavy. Like, it would just be exploring concepts in the Word of God, but practically, how can we use this? There would be games, we would be outside, sometimes we would watch movies, and it just felt nice to be in a place where I wasn't necessarily being judged. Like, I didn't feel like people were watching me, I didn't feel like I had to be a particular person. It just felt like, okay, this feels like peace outside of the house. So I just continued to go. And I was still kind of struggling under the pressure of school and coursework and exams even coming up, and there just not being any money. There's nothing I can do, and you know, like, it got increasingly hard being around my parents. I didn't want to be around them. I felt like I couldn't talk to my sister because she was still so young at the time, and I didn't really feel like my friends understood. Some of them did, and some of them were there for me. Even though I wasn't Christian at the time, I knew they were praying for me. And y'all know who you are. But yeah, I just didn't want to be around my parents, particularly my mum, because it just felt like she was slipping away every day. It felt like every day you have to watch somebody die, and that broke me in a way that I don't think, I'm not in a way I've ever been broken before, but that hit new realms of brokenness for me. I stopped talking to her eventually because I just felt like, at this point, like, I'm preparing myself for you to die. I'm preparing myself for you to not be here anymore, and for me to manage the household, and for me to do that, I need to just block you out. I need to just pretend as if you don't exist, and I'll be okay that way. So so time went on, and I just found myself beginning to question, like, why is this happening to us? Why? Like, I lived for 15 years. Parents had good jobs. We didn't do anything wrong. You know, we were good people. We gave to charity. You know, we were not bad people. Like, why was this happening to us? My sister, like, I would cry endlessly. Like, why is it not me? Why is it not me? Because my thing is that I'd never wanted my sister to go through anything that I went through. With regard to the bullying, with regard to the health issues that I went through, I never wanted her to go through that. So I tried to protect her at literally at all costs, So when all of that started, I felt so helpless, and I felt like I couldn't protect her in the way that I wanted to, and that broke me as well. You just feel vulnerable, you feel exposed, and you feel I can't even begin. Really. And to be honest, I think there's part of it that I probably need to revisit and go back to. There are different layers of healing, I think, and over the years the Lord has definitely helped me to heal, but I definitely know that it's not finished, and I still need to heal from the trauma that I went through in those days. But just continuing onwards, there was also what else happened? I'm trying to think. Yeah, so in that time I was just questioning. I didn't really understand why the stuff was happening that was happening to us, and my friends started inviting me to actually go to church services. And at first I was like, I don't really want to go, but I need to leave this house. I just need to get out of the house. I was definitely running. I was running any way I could run. I was running. So I went, and I don't really know what it was about the worship, but yo, it hit different levels. It hit different levels, and there was something about the pastor of the church that, like, she didn't preach from a I'm up here and you're down there perspective. She preached from a these are the things that I've been through. This is what God has done in my life. Any glory, any adoration that I'm getting don't belong to me. It belongs to God. Like, I don't even want it. You know, like, what's the point of me standing here if my life is not to glorify God? Like, you know, she'd been through, oh, it would bring a tear to your eye. But her testimony and the things that she would say, and the way that I was just able to see God's love in the way she spoke, and the way she just brought the word alive, she just made the word come alive in that time. And I just found myself feeling peace, and it was a peace that I don't think I'd ever felt before. And even in the times of prayer, I would close my eyes and I would just feel peace. And I wouldn't feel like that at home. I was suffocating. I would feel like I couldn't breathe. It felt like I couldn't speak. It felt like the walls in my house were suffocating me. So in that atmosphere, I didn't know what it was about that atmosphere, but I just couldn't get enough of it. So I just continued to go and continue to go. So I was also going to the youth services at the time and the Sunday services. And my parents didn't really understand why I was going. My mum was still bedridden, still ill. My dad was still very much just angry and hurt. And my sister had recovered by this point. So maybe this is now March time. Either late February or early March. And I remember one of the pastor's daughter came up to me, and she was asking after youth service one day, like, do you actually want to know the Lord? Like, do you actually want to have Jesus in your life? And I was like, no. And I went home, and I don't know what it was, but it stayed on me, and I was just thinking, like, why not? Like, this Jesus gives you peace. This Jesus makes you feel whole. Because at the end of the day, as the pastor is preaching, you're not, like, the pastor just was, I didn't really, as she was there, like, I saw her, but there was so much that just revealed the personality and the character of this Jesus that I was like, why not? Like, why not? At this point, what else have you got to live for? Like, there is nothing else. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're just about still living in your house. You just about still have your car. You just about still have your mum. Like, what? You may as well, kind of thing. So I just continue to think about it, and I don't know if I was asked another time and said no again, but I remember distinctly there was a point after a youth meeting, and everybody went downstairs, and she asked to speak to me, and she said, "Are you sure you don't want to ask Jesus to come into your life?" You know, and at that point I was like, okay, sure, sure. Like I like. All I know is that the love and the peace that I feel filling my body in a way that I've never felt before, I can't get that anywhere else. And by this point, I'd already also tried, I'd tried yoga, I'd tried meditating. It just did not do anything for me. It didn't do anything for me. I didn't feel peace. I didn't feel that lifting. And immediately, even the atmosphere of the church, as soon as I walked in, I just felt lifted. I felt peace, and I felt strong. Like, I felt like I could actually go on, kind of thing. And I was really at that point losing the will to live. So I said, yeah, we prayed the prayer. You know, Lord, I invite you into my life. I know that I am a sinner. I believe that Jesus died on the cross for my sins. I invite you into my life. And I don't know, I felt happy, I felt lifted after that point. I felt joy. I really did. I felt joy. And to be honest, I can't really pinpoint times in that span of time where I felt happy. I very rarely felt happy in general. So for me to have felt that lifted, that joy, I knew it wasn't me. So I ran home and I was like, Mom, Dad, I've been saved. And they were like, from what? And I was like, I'm saved. Like, I'm saved. I'm Christian now. And my mum was like, well, why did you do that? And I was like, what? And and it was so interesting, because after that had happened, and after all of that joy that I'd felt, even running home, I knew that that was the right thing. So anybody that had told me anything otherwise, even though my parents didn't really understand it and they were confused, and they were like, listen, what are you doing following all of that stuff? Like, we've got bigger things to do. I still felt like in my heart, I was like, I know that I made the right choice. So as time continued, Mum continued to still, like, she just still wasn't good. But I actually managed to convince her to come to church. And it was really interesting because my dad actually refused to drive me to church most Sundays, so I'd walk. It was about a half an hour walk from my house. But on the days that my mum would come, he would drive us because she couldn't walk properly. And eventually, over time, my mum she felt what I had felt, and she gave her life to the Lord as well. And from that point, she just kind of started to get better. And it wasn't a, oh my gosh, all of a sudden she's healed, hallelujah. Like, no, it was over time, bit by bit, I could see that she was getting stronger. I could see that she was beginning to regain herself, because up to this point it just felt as if she was slipping away, like bits of her was just dying each day. More and more of her was dying. And after that point, it just felt like she was returning to herself. But there was a strength that she had that it just can only have been God. So yeah, so after that point, it just kind of continued in a barrel effect. You know, after that point, my sister came to the Lord, and my dad as well. But it's important to note actually that our lives didn't really change in the way of finances straight away. There were some jobs that my dad would get here and there, but for the most part there was a lot of time where we just didn't have. But what was interesting is that you would have times where you would begin to just see different things popping up. Like, somebody would call you, oh, I was praying for you and I just felt as if I should give this word to you, or I was praying for you and I felt like the Lord led me to give this to you. And there began to feel like a sense of community where people didn't didn't shame you for what you were going through, but they were actually partnering with the Lord in helping to be a blessing to you. Like the amount of just the blessings that we had received from the ministry that we were now part of throughout the whole process that we've been going through it felt overwhelming. Like sometimes you it just felt like you just had to cry, because it's not like prior to us going through what we had been through, we didn't have friends. My parents had we used to have parties. People used to just influx of people in and out of the house. We used to have barbecues every summer, Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve parties. Hundreds of people used to be in the house. But it felt as if as soon as we started going through a process, people didn't really understand. And where some people kind of stuck around, some people helped us, there was just, we don't really understand what's going on here. So people either backed away, or we just distanced ourselves and became more insular and clung on to each other. So it felt overwhelming, feeling a sense of, these people care. There's a level of blessing. And on top of that, they're not saying that I'm doing it because look at my works, look at what I'm doing for you. They're saying, the Lord told me to do this for you. The Lord told me to step in and stand in the gap for you in this place. There have been people that have prayed for us, tirelessly prayed for us. There have been people that have poured out finances for us. There have been people that have helped us in the way of job hunting and all that kind of stuff. And it's words can't even come for me to even begin to talk about that. But just, I'm so grateful to God for aligning us with that ministry and those people, because they really just stood in the gap for us. Yeah, this is going to be very long if I continue, so I'm going to break up the rest of the testimony. So anything to do with finances, anything to do with my university experience, anything to do with Lord help me, anything to do with dealing with issues of lust, sex, all of that kind of stuff, depression, because that oh gosh, praise God. Yeah, anything to do with that, even post-grad as well. Oh my, that is a separate video in itself, because in the last year, I graduated from uni in 2019. In the last year, I've really, the Lord. So yeah, I think I'm going to stop it here. But yeah, I hope it blessed you. I don't think I'd be feeling it so strongly in my heart if the Lord didn't have people in mind that it would bless. But yeah, I'm done. God bless you. Have an amazing time in the world, and take care of yourself.